They say ignorance is bliss, but as a lifelong journalist, I really couldn't disagree more. If there's something shocking to know, I want to know about it, and I want you to know about it too. I'm Peggy Bunker, and I can't wait for you to know it all. This season's focus, do we even know what we're eating? The truth about factory farming. Hey everyone, and welcome to Know It All. I'm Peggy Bunker. I love all of our guests on this show, especially this season, but I really love today's guest because he's a personal friend and he's doing such incredible work in the world. I'm talking about Zach Skow. Instead of focusing so much on helping animals and helping them live a better life, which we've done a lot this season, he's actually helping human beings live a better life by connecting them with animals. We're talking about Pawsitive Change, the program that Zach created in prisons around many parts of California, taking shelter dogs that are about to get the axe, get put down because nobody wants them, hooking them up with people who are serving time in prison, and it helps them both in the most unbelievably dramatic ways. You're just going to love them. You're going to love this story. Welcome, Zach Skow. He is the founder of Marley's Mutts and the Pawsitive Change program, which has dramatically affected so many people's lives and so many dog lives. Zach Skow, thank you so much for being here on Know It All. We want people to know it all about what you do and what you have just created this goodness in the world. So thank you so much for being here.
You are very welcome, Peggy Bunker. I absolutely love you. I've loved you since the day we met. You have never stopped believing in what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to kind of percolate throughout this world in terms of second chances. And to be honest, I don't know where we would be without you. You really helped us get to this point over the last several years. So thank you.
That means so much. Thank you. My husband, Mike Murphy, and I are huge supporters of what you do. And the thing with you, Zach, is we could talk about 100 different topics. And the problem is like keeping it tight and not getting into all the different things. But you are so knowledgeable, and you also underestimate yourself in just the impact that you have made in prisons and for incarcerated people, but also incarcerated dogs who've ended up in a miserable dog shelter that have horrible lives. And you have saved so many dogs and human beings. Tell us a little bit about your insight to the current state of the animal crisis. We have such an overabundance of dogs. Everybody who has a dog knows how much they just need a human, somebody to love them, a family. And we have this just massive overabundance of these poor animals. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even something that's going on in the last couple of years. This has been a societal, if not cultural, consistent problem for many decades, since the 60s and 70s. Typically, in terms of national numbers, California and Texas rank 1 and 2. We're kind of always oscillating back and forth between 1 and 2 in terms of euthanasias, in terms of intakes. So that would be stray dogs or owner-surrendered dogs. And there are a number of variables, obviously, that contribute to this problem. We have the sociocultural variables, which are how are people interpreting and understanding caring for an animal from the beginning to adopting through caring for that dog through end of life. So there's a lot of work we have to do to just explain to people, give them the information, the knowledge, the data to understand how many dogs are being euthanized nationally in the United States of America, roughly 2 million, and really try to encourage people to focus their efforts on adopting rather than shopping. We have huge issues related to spay and neuter. Spay and neuter is kind of an unsexy topic. It's something that everybody knows is critically important. It's probably the variable that will lead to us solving this issue. However, and this is a big however, we need coordinated, comprehensive efforts through municipal shelters, county entities, and then state and national entities to really focus on the problem, or else we're never going to solve it. So what does that mean in terms of spay and neuter? In terms of spay and neuter, what that means is investigating targeted surrender and stray data. Where are these animals coming from in terms of a zip code problem? So here in Kern County, we're going to look at all of the very large Kern County, and we're going to identify which of those zip codes are the majority of the dogs coming from. With that data, we're then going to target through community spay and neuter events, through leaflets, through canvassing, through all of these efforts to give the resources to that community to help spay and neuter their animals. One of the things that Marley's Mutts did years ago is for 7 years, we put a tremendous amount of money and resources into spay and neuter to try to get us to what is called no kill. No kill is below 10% euthanasia of healthy animals. This is something that Kern County was never going to get to. We were always at you do wild numbers you almost wouldn't believe. 40+% of animals euthanized within the shelter system.
Wow.
It's a absolute holocaust taking place specifically for young, large dogs. But by putting all those resources into spay and neuter, we're also doing community events. We're addressing the cultural, societal issues while we're providing these services for those communities. Those communities also have been pushed away, had the problem blamed on them for so many years. We're going to blame the Hispanics on the east side, the black population on the south side, or the poor whites on the north. We're always going to blame a pocket of people for why this problem is so bad, instead of pulling them into the solutions that are going to help us solve the problem together as a collective.
So when we talked, you said you actually called this situation of not investigating other communities and the overcrowding at dog shelters, you called this like a white woman problem, which you were like, I know that's kind of rude, but when I go volunteer, I'm a foster person. I take foster dogs into my house. When I go there, it is a bunch of white women picking up all these dogs, dropping off food, whatever. What do you mean by that? I know you're not trying to we're doing a good job, but what you're saying is we're not involving the communities where the overpopulation of dogs is coming from.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's kind of a compliment, to be honest with you. What it means is that women in general have taken up this mantle, have taken up this cause, and done their best to initiate change, right? And a lot of women have gotten into training. A lot of women have gotten into roles of influence at shelters and within municipalities to try and solve the problem. But just collectively speaking, if we're going to really try and solve this problem nationally, even within our own municipalities, we have to bring everybody in. And more so, what I meant is by ostracizing marginalized communities is that we tend to just blame those communities as opposed to going into those communities, investigating the variables that are leading to these problems, and then addressing those variables. We tend to just kind of blame, which is what we've done with the shelter system. We just blame the shelter system. There's a wide-ranging popular belief that the reason animals are being euthanized is because shelters just like euthanizing animals. Inept directors, inept staff are just bringing dogs in the front door, carelessly, haplessly euthanizing them, putting them in 50-gallon drums, and then shipping them out to be, disposed of. And it's just simply not the case. The number of dogs that are coming through the front door of a shelter prohibits them from being able to keep up. So what happens when 50 dogs come through the front door on a daily basis, whether stray or owner surrenders? Those dogs are going to have to be doubled and tripled up in the kennels within that facility. What happens when you double and triple up dogs? You have fights. So once those dogs get in a fight, they can't be adopted. They're going to have something on their record. It's against shelter medicine protocols. So they're spreading disease by sharing confines like that. So they have limitations on what they can do. They can't just fit thousands of animals within their shelter. So unless they're leaving via adoption, rescue, and transfer, and they keep coming through the front door, we're never going to solve the problem. So more so what I meant is that, white women, whether they're trainers, folks who want to solve this problem, have done a tremendous job addressing this issue. But we have to involve a wider array of individuals to help target this in a cultural way within each pocket of our society.
Yeah, absolutely. Where the hell are they all coming from? Where are all the dogs coming from? Who is not spaying, not neutering?
Yeah, let me back up 1 second to just finish addressing spay and neuter isn't something that people like to think about will help solve this problem. But by our organization, along with Kern County Animal Services, investing several $millions in spay and neuter, we actually achieved no kill in 2019, the fall of 2019, which is a radical achievement, something that we never thought would be accomplished. Then COVID happened right after that. And COVID initiated really some of the darkest days that we've ever faced in animal sheltering or rescue. And we've been trying to keep up and address that ever since. We're finally starting to have some corrections. We're having more people get into this space. We're having more problem solvers get into this space. But we really need to be attracting the best and brightest to come into this niche of the world and try to help solve some of these problems. And one of the primary ways we do it is through comprehensive targeted spay and neuter, through community efforts, community outreach, and really both literally addressing the problem through population control, and then addressing it through socio-cultural mechanisms.
Why isn't there like an incentive? I mean, you think about, because people think this isn't my problem. This isn't my problem, but it is, because shelters, especially municipal, county, et cetera, shelters, that's your dollar. That's your taxpayer dollar. So basically you're spending a bunch of money to support an unwanted dog, and then we just euthanize it anyway, probably 5, 6, 7 months you euthanize it. Why can't we pay people, take some of that money, pay them to bring in their dogs, spay and neuter. Or if you're pumping puppies out into the world with breeding operations, you have to you should license them. You have to pay for that. You can't buy a dog unless it's licensed. Or is it there's some way to put some sort of controls there? It's just impossible to enforce.
No, there are a lot of ways that we can impose rules and regulations and laws. Many of them are already on the books, and many of them are very difficult to implement because animal control and the police department simply don't have the resources to enforce this, especially in places like Kern County, where you only have a handful of animal control officers who are trying to address thousands of square miles of space, where we have tremendous, rural communities. We have urban sprawl kind of dotted through these rural communities so dogs can survive out in the wilderness and kind of repopulate and procreate. I mean, and the other thing we got to really think about when you're addressing this is karmically. I mean, monetarily, we're spending $90 billion a year to lock up animals and then in many cases euthanize them. It
How
requires two
much?
to three,
How much
90
are we spending?
billion,
90
90.
billion
Yeah.
dollars
This is
to lock up.
between municipal, county, shelter organizations all over the country.
Can't that just be reappropriated to if you say you're a low income person, you don't have money to go spay and your neuter, which I know that is a barrier to getting your dog having that surgery. If you pay for it, if you make it free, or you incentivize them to bring in dogs to spay, and even if it's $50 a dog, you come in and spay, wouldn't that? I know it's upfront cost, but wouldn't that save on the back end? This is
Oh,
just a
1,000%.
supply, right?
You
Okay.
hit the nail on the head. The equation has already been, the algorithm has already been created and proven efficacious, right? But it's a matter of having this type of money earmarked through county and municipal agencies for spay and neuter. And then you have to carry it out. And then it has to be consistent. A lot of times what happens is you get this big upfront, you know, pot of money that gets thrown at spay and neuter, but it isn't consistent. So the problem will then reemerge because animals can procreate, so freely. So we need something that is targeted, that is consistent. There's a lot of really wonderful organizations like Cal for Animals, which is through the UC Davis. They put a ton of money into addressing spay and neuter. But unfortunately, from a rescue standpoint, from our organization, it's tremendously difficult for us to raise money for spay and neuter. It's outrageously hard. And spay and neuter has almost doubled in costs since before COVID. We have fewer veterinarians, fewer veterinary technicians, fewer mobile units, which is really what we need in a rural community like Kern. We need mobile units, which is, for the viewers that don't know, fifth wheels and RVs outfitted as mobile veterinary clinics to help us accomplish comprehensive spay and neuter. Yeah.
Yeah. So you roll around, you go to where it's needed. You can't
Yeah.
ask people to add that extra layer of complication to
Yeah.
get the
And
dog to you.
2 to 3 human beings. This is another thing people have to understand. We have done a terrible job, not just identifying the problem, but blaming the shelter system for being the source of all of this terribleness, right?
Oh my
It's the
gosh. Yeah.
shelters. They're the ones euthanizing. They're the ones killing. They have no regard for these animals. That's just simply not the case. These people are operating within a whole bunch of boundary conditions, a whole bunch of limits that they can't, affect. So if our community, if our society keeps bringing them through the front door and that same society isn't coming in to adopt them, then guess what? They simply have to euthanize. And those are all people that care about animals, people that work at animal shelters. I have never met anybody who works at an animal shelter that doesn't care about animals and doesn't care about animals to a degree that supersedes their own personal ego. People really care. There's often traumatized, people really detrimentally affected by life who get into serving animals, which is a very healthy way to exercise their trauma, to be of service. We grow up when we're of service to something, right? And I have never met an animal shelter worker. That those people could make a ton of money doing other things in this world. And instead, they're giving of themselves to these animals in need. And we tend to really dump on them publicly for their role within this space. So we have to, first and foremost, lift up our shelter workers, understanding that 2 to 3 individuals have to stick that needle full of sedative into that dog, then stick that needle full of euthanol in that dog, then calm that dog as it leaves this world. And they're doing that many times a day. Can you
Over
imagine
and
karmically
over.
what that does? It's just a terrible
And
situation.
they're lovely. They're lovely dogs. I mean, I know this because once again, as I'm going to bed, I just start seeing all the dogs, and I follow so many remarkable people who all they do for their job is go to shelters, highlight adoptable, wonderful animals that are about to be put down.
Yeah.
And half of them I've called. There's many times I've said, "Okay, let me take it." And I run down to foster or whatever, but it feels so futile. It feels like it's just a drop in the ocean, and
Yep.
we got to get to the headwaters part of it to cull the supply. So I
Exactly.
keep thinking in my head,
Exactly.
this is a supply and demand problem.
Mhm.
We need to cull the supply so that we can, curate the demand in a healthier way. But I want, before we move on, what did you say? You said being in service.
We grew up being in service to others, and that's what, a lot of us who have experienced trauma, who have had a tough time in life, the way we can healthfully process that and exercise some of those demons and traumas is through being of service to others. And it just kills me when you go into a shelter environment, it is a cacophonous, loud, smelly, awful. Every part of your senses are telling you that this is terrible. And those people reside in those places. Those people, intentionally take jobs at these facilities to try to make a difference in the world, and we're ostracizing them simply out of ignorance or out of some boneheaded desire to oversimplify this equation, this shelter crisis equation, so that we can have a bad guy. We have this very Hollywood approach to this problem, as though it's, well, if we can just find a shelter director who isn't a witch, we'll succeed. And that's just not the case.
I can't believe that they're getting, same as you. I've never met a single person. I think they're absolute saints. I cannot imagine that there's a ton of pay in it. I think it is absolutely a self-sacrificial job. So I hate to hear that they're not treated with the respect and honor. They are doing a community service, taking care of these animals. What do we do? What can we do? And so this podcast is about people knowing what's going on behind the scenes. When you go to a breeder and spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 on a breeder dog, you are denying a shelter dog that I see purebreds all the time, French bulldogs, golden retrievers, doodles of all kind. I see every type of dog at the shelter. I've fostered them all. It's so frustrating to me that people go and get a new puppy. People in my own family have gone and gotten a breeder dog. It just makes me want to kill them.
Yeah, for people to act like, that purchasing a breeder dog is never going to affect the shelter system is just lunacy. I mean, our shelters are absolutely filled. We have so many French bulldogs who have had prolapsed anuses, all of these issues related to congenital, breeding problems.
Inbreeding,
So many
overbreeding.
huskies, post Game of Thrones, so many huskies. One of the questions you brought up just recently is, how do we address this? How do we take on all of this? You talked about everything being a drop in the bucket. And that is the curse of every rescuer. There are so many people who identify this problem and say, we got to do something. And they're out there hustling, they're out there doing it. But it's a drop in the bucket. It's one dog at a time. It's a tremendous amount of effort and application to bring this dog from rescue through fruition to adoption, and et cetera and so forth. So when we created Marley's Mutts, I created Marley's Mutts, as in liver failure, alcoholic liver failure, needing a liver transplant, having, no idea what to do with my life. But it was the second I started being of service to my dogs and creating a pack to serve around me that helped finally serve me into this new trajectory of serving animals in need. And we intentionally created Marley's Mutts to address every variable. So what we have done with our programs is create a program to address every issue. So in terms of the most efficacious way we can save lives in California, what is it? It's spay and neuter, obviously. But then there's rescue by relocation. What is rescue by relocation? That is taking dogs from areas of high concentration euthanasia, Los Angeles, Kern County, these areas, and shipping them to areas of low concentration euthanasia, Pacific Northwest, Montana, the Dakotas, Middle Canada. So we are constantly, every week, with our Mutt Movers, our Motor City bus, and our Motor City van, driving these dogs to areas where they can be saved. So bam, right there, you have a live outcome. It's a very low ROI. The return on investment is spectacular. Your investment to accomplish this live outcome is virtually nil. So we have to be focusing on programs like that.
How much is it? How much of people are like, okay, there's something I can do. I could sponsor, what is it, a bus full of dogs, like one route
it's
somewhere.
less than $200 a dog to save their life and get them into a live outcome. Whereas another live outcome would be us bringing our dogs from the shelter into the ranch. We have a 20-acre rescue ranch here in Tehachapi. That ranch is going to provide the structure, the love, the needs, the nourishment, the enrichment these dogs need. But anytime a dog is staying at the ranch, you're racking up costs, right? The longer they stay there, some dogs stay for years, right? So those are our constant overhead that we're addressing. So rescue by relocation is an incredible way. We do that with aircraft too. We did that with pet rescue pilots and Julian Havor, one of my best friends. There's organizations like Wings of Rescue, all these other organizations that are schlepping dogs from point A to point B to save their lives.
I've been to the ranch. The ranch is amazing. And what I love about the ranch, Marley's Mutts Ranch, if anybody's out there looking for a dog, your website's excellent. You update it. You could see the dogs that are there. Part of the problem is many people want a little dog. You do get little dogs, but you have a lot of larger dogs. And also people dump dogs around where you live, at Tehachapi and Bakersfield and stuff. There's a lot of people just will dump a dog. I always see Great Pyrenees and stuff out there that people dump off, which it Crazy. But that's a great site to go to. But if people want to sponsor, say, a bus full of transported for Marley movers,
Mutt movers.
Mutt movers, thank you. Mutt movers, that's a great way to do. Go to the website, just sponsor one of these moves. How often do you do that? Are
Every
you
week.
moving every week?
Yeah.
They call the youth list. They call you in on the, say,
Mhm.
here's the youth list who's going to get put down.
Every
These are the
other
dogs.
Friday, we get a euthanasia list. It's almost
Yep.
always young, large dogs. So, what is the niche that Marley's Mutts is trying to fill? Before we had 80 foster homes, we were doing constant small dogs. We were doing everything under the sun. There's a lot of organizations out there that do small dogs now. So, we had to shift our attention to be more effective for the dogs who are in the greatest need. So we serve the worst of the most vulnerable dogs, which are young, large shepherds, huskies, pitties, etc. So Akitas. So we're bringing in dogs that no other rescue can take, no other rescue can handle, because again, most of them are working within a foster network. One of the other variables to address this, right, is teaching. We have to culturally shift the needle. How do we do that? We have to get out into our community, speak to the kids, speak to people who can affect change within our culture. So our Miracle Mutts program has about 20 to 25 dog teams. These are all therapy dog teams. We have a exclusive contract with Adventist. We work with a bunch of hospitals here in Kern County, tons and tons of schools, over 100 nonprofits that Miracle Mutts serves. So Miracle Mutts is going to these institutions, to these schools, to Bakersfield College, to Cal State University Bakersfield, and we are educating the public on the problem. The quicker we can educate, really set the intention with the children and get them to understand this at a young age, then when they come of age, they're going to be in a better position to help affect change. We address spay and neuter. So I'm just trying to touch on all the variables that will
Yeah.
help us solve this problem. But then there's training. Like I just mentioned, us pulling large young dogs. The reason they are euthanized so much is because they don't have the skills to get adopted and stay adopted. What are the chances you're going to go to a shelter and pick up an 11-month pit bull that weighs 75 pounds that you have no idea what its background is? You don't know if it gets along with others. You don't know anything. It's never been on a leash. It doesn't, right? There's all
And
these
it's
things that you don't
stressed, it's
understand.
traumatized. Like dogs in a shelter that don't show well. Of course, they don't show well. They're in a loud, barking shelter. They don't have no idea what's going on. Sometimes they're crammed in with other dogs and they get labeled as aggressive, which is a death sentence.
Yeah, exactly. So we addressed that through Pawsitive Change. Pawsitive Change we developed as a comprehensive inmate canine training program. So we are taking dogs from the euthanasia list. We're bringing them into the California State Penal System, CDCR. And we have currently 2 programs at North Kern State Prison, a maximum security program and a minimum security program. We just had graduation at M Yard North Kern, and we just brought the dogs in to A Yard at North Kern, including a whole bunch of dogs that were abused and neglected, part of a felony abuse case in California City. We then also have 2 maximum security programs at Tehachapi State Prison, which is right next door to our ranch. So we have this tremendous symbiosis between ourselves and the institution next door. And what that does is allow these dogs to be in a 14-week-long program where they are living in the actual prison with 3 student handlers per dog. These guys are working outside of their race. They're working to, again, grow up by serving something. They are working together as a unit. They are giving and receiving unconditional love. There's a whole bunch of benefits for our students, but the obvious benefits for our dogs is that they learn the skills to get adopted and stay adopted.
And get out of the shelter. So let me just summarize. You take shelter dogs out of the shelter. You take them to a prison where inmates there, some have been serving 10 years, 20 years, sometimes for all the violent things you might think at 40 years, murder, robbery, burglary, drug trafficking, etc. But they cannot get into this program to get a dog to be part of the Pawsitive Change program unless they have proven that they are interested in reform, have behaved as such, have passed behavioral qualifications. They earn their way into this program. And some of the inmates that say that this is all they wanted to do, they would have done anything to get access to this program and get a dog.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So what they have to do to qualify, and again, we are working with, in some cases, the majority of our classes are what we call LWOP, life without parole, or looking at 25 to longer sentences to life. I would say we almost always have a plurality of what we call lifers, but a lot of those guys through state Senate bills, through House bills, through federal bills like the First Step Act, have been able to get a second chance at life, where they're able to get out of prison. Many of our long-termers, a lot of our students went into prison as kids. So they were sentenced to die in prison as children. A lot of those guys,
Yep.
Oscar, Vo, and
Yeah,
Brian
Bo.
James. These are all students of ours that spent years in our program who were incarcerated as youth for loss of life crimes and were sentenced to die in prison. That rule has since been ruled unconstitutional, and they were given a chance at release, and so they earned it. But to get into the program, they have to have no 115s, right? So no write-ups of any sort within a year. No fights, no cell phones, no drugs. They also have to write an essay about why they want to be involved in the program. They can't have any animal abuse or female abuse past because so many of our teachers or so many of our trainers are women. And we are going into that facility every week for 3 to 4 hours a week. We're training each of those programs. We have 3 trainers that come in to cultivate those groups of gentlemen and women. We've done girls' juvenile programs. We've done women's programs in the federal facility. And we are striving to better ourselves, all of us, the trainers, our students. We're there to believe in them. We're there to believe in the dogs. We're there to share love. We're there to be love. We're there to embody light, optimism, opportunity, and really try to turn prison from an extraordinarily dark, just an incubator of dark energy that most people can't fathom. And we're trying to bring in some light and some love and really get these guys out of this rut of political prison politics and into this groove of prison programming.
Which is amazing. And the fact that your program has done this, and worked with you on an interview at North Kern State Prison there in Tehachapi. What I thought was amazing about meeting some of these inmates, and you call them student inmates, right? You call them student inmates.
Yeah, we like to
They
make sure that they know that they are dog trainers and rescuers first, that we don't see,
right
you're not an inmate in this program moving forward.
or
You're
a
a dog trainer
prisoner.
and a rescuer. Yeah.
Yeah, you relabel them. You immediately get to work on their identity. But I didn't realize this about when people go to prison. People stay with their own. There's Hispanics over here, there's Blacks over here, there's whites over here. They don't mingle except for in this program.
Yeah, in the California state penal system is more rigidly racialized than any other prison system in America. That is not by design from the correctional staff necessarily. That is something that is by design because of the gangs that control these institutions. So yeah, if you're incarcerated as a white person, you stick with the whites. There's varying degrees of whites, how they organize. There's varying degrees of how the Northerners and then Southern Hispanics and Blacks, and then we have what's called the others, which are, not Mexican, Black, or white, Pacific Islander, Native American, etc. And these factions have rigid rules that you have to stick with in terms of who you eat with, who you conversate with, who you work out with, who you trade with. These rules are there to kind of keep structure within the institution. And one of the things that Pawsitive Change does is team up these guys outside of their race on one dog. So you got 3 guys with different racial and gang backgrounds that have to work together to be of service to this animal. And it's
And they
really
move to a different part of the prison. Don't they actually, like everybody in this program is actually moved to a different part of the prison where you all have their dogs outside
yeah, I wouldn't say
their cell?
different. It's just a normal housing unit like any other housing unit, but we
Okay.
coalesce our guys together so that they're in the same pod. Yeah. So the for instance, like housing unit 5 at Tehachapi State Unit is the Pawsitive Change pod. So half of the bottom of the pod is all Pawsitive Change students and dogs.
And I want to make sure we get the incredible achievement that this has been. You just got this program now to go into Arizona. Now is just adopting this program into Arizona penal system. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the reason this is so exciting is several fold. But one, this is the first time we've ever had state legislature, on the right pull to bring a program into their state. They said, we saw how efficacious this is. We've been watching you from afar, and we want to make this happen. This is Senator Kavanaugh. This is a variety of different folks within the state legislature in Arizona. This is something they pitched to the legislature to get earmarked funding for. So this is remarkable how it all took place. They got approval for this funding. We hit some hiccups through the governor's office, but it was finally approved. So now this money has
Wow.
been earmarked, and we are headed into Lewis Correctional Facility, which is, I think, the biggest correctional facility in Arizona. It's in Buckeye to the west of Phoenix. And why this is really exciting is because our dream and everybody else who follows Pawsitive Change's dream, everyone almost always says, why can't this be in more facilities? This should be
Yeah.
everywhere. And it's been
Right.
tremendously cost prohibitive because it costs us a lot of money to operate the program. But logistically, we have our ranch here in California. So that makes it very easy to operate the program out of Tehachapi State Prison next door. How are we supposed to do it logistically when they're in another state? So we developed a new kind of setup where we're cooperating with One Love Rescue, with Heidi's Village, with Pinal County out there in Arizona to accomplish a different kind of operational procedure for how we're doing things on the outside. Same stuff on the inside. We're going in once a week for 3 hours. We're training our students. We're following a curriculum. They're writing homework. They're doing all this work on themselves, right? But this
But
is something that
that's
it's a scale.
scaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you're doing, you're scaling it. You're taking something which is so wonderful because we need it everywhere. Obviously, we need it everywhere, not just for the inmates, but for the shelters as well, to get these animals out of the shelters. The most important thing, I think, when I first met you many years ago, that I was blown away by is when you go to prison, sometimes as a 16-year-old, some of the people we interviewed that are, recently been let out, what do you call it when they get let out? You have you
We call them returning citizens.
returning citizens, but you
Or
said
recidivism is the term. They usually say is to the house. Is how much time do you have to the house? Meaning
to the
how much
house.
yeah,
There's
before you
all
can come home.
such lingo. You can tell how you got all the lingo down. But
Yeah.
when people go to prison that early in their lives, or even just for a decade or 2 decades, when they come out, almost statistically, it's almost very probable they're going back. Like, what is the
Mhm.
national recidivism rate for people who don't take
National
part in this
recidivism
program?
about 70%. So 70% of people
70%.
who have been incarcerated will be incarcerated again within 5 years. So what that demonstrates is a horrifically ineffectual system. If you
Ballooned
watch it
up.
on a graph, incarceration is like here, and then it goes zoop, and it just goes up to 2.6 million. And then all of a sudden, we're spending almost $100 billion a year on locking people up, not providing them any rehabilitation. We're going to call it CDCR, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, but there's going to be virtually no rehabilitative component. We started to push in 2012 to get into the prison system and reached like shut doors slammed in our face after doors slammed in our face. And then we had a warden who believed in us in 2016. So we kicked off January of 2016. And I tell you what, the prison culture ever since then has radically changed. We are almost always greeted with open arms within the prison system, from wardens to chief deputies to parole, everybody within that system, the chief of rehabilitative programs, they support us like crazy and they want us to grow and get to as many facilities as we can. And they're trying to make it happen. More money than ever has been allocated for prison programming within the system of CDCR, especially effective programming like ours. We have 0% recidivism. We've only had one guy
That's
go back
Well,
to
don't say
prison.
that too quickly, because I think that is
Yeah.
the most important thing. 0% recidivism. So you're talking about a national average between 70 and 75%, maybe more, because there's some numbers, but they're not totally accurate. But over 70% of people who have been in prison, no matter how long, go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Your program, if the student inmates go to the dog trainers, go to Pawsitive Change, learn how to train a dog, walk a dog, operate a dog business, learn some business skills, get that confidence back in themselves that they can do something besides deal drugs or whatever put them behind prison bars when they were 17, 18, 20 years old. They don't go back. None of the people that have gone through the Pawsitive Change program have gone back to prison in over a decade.
We had one gentleman who came,
One
he
guy.
lost his family in a car accident. He started
Oh,
using again. He had been in our program for years, got out of prison, had this horrific experience happen, and then he came back to our program at a different prison facility and completed a program there. We have 27. One of the things we don't talk about
are
much
you so
because
pissed off at that guy for screwing up your numbers?
no, no, not at
Last we
all. I
spoke,
thought
you
it
had
was
zero.
so
You have one
touching.
dude.
I mean, it was so touching because he came back to our program, so it was so neat to see him in our program at a different prison facility. Like, how serendipitous is that?
The people that I met in your program, they had tough stories. They were a little scary. Like when I first sat down and interviewed them, I will say they were a little scary. And then you start talking to them and you realize they were just kids when they got sent to prison. And they cried. They're so filled with gratitude for what you have given them and how much they love their dogs. Some of them hated dogs and they just wanted to get into the program just to do something. And then now they love dogs. Like Greg, I still think about his story he made me. He's like, I hated dogs. He was so funny. But you have saved their lives. You've saved the dog's life that they get assigned to. It must be terrible when they have to give the dog back.
Yeah, it is definitely challenging, but it's, we all have attachment disorders from one degree to another, and it is tough. Luckily, our program continues. So the guys will wait a month or two or less, and we're going to bring in a new batch of dogs that they're going to connect with and rehabilitate. So, and then a lot of our guys, this is one of the unsung real victory points for our program is that 27 of our former trainers in prison are now pet industry professionals on the outside. 27 guys, everybody who's wanted to get into the pet industry. And we're talking, predominantly black and brown gang members, guys who are totally unconventionally. You don't see a lot of black and brown folks in general involved in the dog training space. That's more of what I was talking about, dominated by white women, was kind of the dog training space. But now it's really opening up, and our guys have found tremendous success getting out of prison, joining the dog training field, being of service to a whole bunch of rescues, mostly in the Los Angeles area, but also up north with Troy and Sacramento and that region. So we're really providing comprehensive workforce development that helps these guys launch into a career the second they get out of prison. And I can't underestimate how important that is, because the biggest problems for guys returning home, returning citizens have very little support to try to get housing, to try to find a career, to get this, that, or the other. And with a lot of our guys, all you really need is a phone to be propping up your marketing for your social, your business. And then we have such a great network of guys who are already doing it. We know so many different rescues and shelters, and Colleen over at LA Canines has hired a ton of our guys.
Yeah, you have different organizations that specifically hire your graduates because they're so well trained and they have excellent skills. In the last few minutes that we have, because I know we're going to run out of time here in a minute, I want to put like an open call out. This is the pet overpopulation, the dog overpopulation problem is a supply and demand issue. We need some smart thinkers to put their brain around this to deal with. It's such an easily solvable problem, I think, if we can just get some money behind it, some functionality behind it of how to spay and neuter animals and reduce the supply. So Silicon Valley, talking to you, all these smart tech heads, I've talked to some of you already. It's still a question out there. How do we get this? How do we get something passed to be funded at a statewide level for all the states to deal with this? Because it is costing us billions of dollars on the back end and so much suffering that doesn't need to happen to get to that point, just to kill the dog. Let's figure it out from the beginning. So there's that.
I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah, let's all get to come on that. When we have that meeting and these people come forward, we're going to solve this together. You need to be there. Do you have a quick solution you want to shoot out right now?
Solutions are very quick. Unequivocally, we have to focus on comprehensive targeted spay and neuter from the zip codes that the dogs are originating from. If we don't have consistent comprehensive spay and neuter that is present in these communities, we will never get to no kill. What are the most cost-effective ways we can do that? 100% spay and neuter, 100%, especially because if we do it at volume, it's much cheaper. Rescue by relocation. We have to put many more resources into helping us get dogs out of California, out of Texas, into areas of lower euthanasia. There are areas all over the United States of America where they're not euthanizing dogs, right? So we have to, the best way in terms of efficiency is to focus on those two programs. However, large dogs that are coming out of the shelter system need to be trained. Those dogs will not get adopted, will not stay adopted unless they have training that allows them to fall within a certain parameter. So programs like Pawsitive Change, comprehensive training program. We have almost no training for shelter dogs. A lot of these dogs are liabilities, whether you want to admit it or not. They're liabilities. They don't have the skills, they don't have the experience, the structure, the rules, boundaries, discipline, all of these things, right? So we need to have a more comprehensive way to address training so that these dogs can get the skills they need to get adopted and stay adopted. And we can do that at scale with Pawsitive Change. There are 36 prison facilities, not including jails, within California, tens of thousands of inmates who would love the opportunity to be able to be of service to an animal in the prison system. So these are just a few ways we can really radically address the problem quickly. But if we're not willing to spend money on spay and neuter, if we're not willing to address that, again, it's not a very sexy program because you're just spaying and neutering. If we're not willing to pump money into that, we're never going to achieve what we need.
Right. Well, you have made such a massive difference. I know you're just getting started. I love it that the program's starting to scale to other states. I think this is just it'll just become a norm that people have a dog, and it will help us with the shelter overcrowding problem. Go to marleysmutts.org, pawsitivechange.org also. But main website that has all of your links on it is marleysmutts.org. You can find anything there, right? Mm-hmm. And also you can see all the dogs at the ranch that are available to adopt. Zach Skow, you are creating such an amazing, I know it's got to be so exhausting, but you are creating such an incredible opportunity for these students that have a new career to step into. And I've seen them all go do it and they're thriving. They're not surviving. They're thriving. I'm watching all of their businesses on Instagram. They're badasses. They're doing so well, supporting their families and everything. So you've got to feel so good about that. You created this all by yourself. And I thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for loving on them. Well, first of all, I didn't create it by myself. There are so many incredible, Lisa Porter, Leah Marquez, all the trainers involved that help us to create this and implement it, or, Andy, Ariana, Maria, everybody, Carlos, Chris, they're incredible. But thank you, because what's happened and what can happen with every human being on this planet is to open their hearts empathetically to these individuals. Because if we want guys to get out of prison and be absorbed by our culture, to become productive members of society, we have to have some kind of empathy, some sort of ability to look at them in a different light. And what you did and what I saw happen real time was I watched you fall in love with these guys. I
I
watched you go
did.
through this
Yeah.
period of kind of excited
Yeah.
intimidation
Yeah.
to, oh my God, I love these guys. Every
I
single one of
did.
them cried during their interviews practically,
Everyone. Yeah.
which is it's so human. And I think, I'm not a conventional Christian, but I truly believe that we all have to walk in the shoes of Christ, to do our best to be Christ-like. And what Christ talked about all of the time was loving and serving the incarcerated, loving and serving those at the doldrums of our society. And it's so fulfilling, and it's such an incredible exercise of humanity and dignity and love to give those guys mentally a second chance, to in your mind and heart open it to those guys, and you find a real special experience.
Well, that's what I think it is. That was the beauty part of it, is because they decided who they were and who they were on this planet, which was they were bad humans, they'd done wrong. And then that transformation of deciding they weren't bad. And they started to acknowledge a side of themselves that was human and giving and loving. And they forgot about the old identity. They dropped their former identities when this whole world had just told them they were awful pieces of whatever, And so seeing that whole self-identity shift in them that the program gave them is remarkable. So I loved meeting them, and it's been super fun to follow them. So I'm very glad to know you and blessed to know you.
I'm very happy to have done this interview, and I really appreciate you helping shine a light on second chances, both for dogs and for people. It's critically important. And let's face it, we've been treating man's best friend like our worst enemy for decades. And we can address this, we can solve this, we can face this with dignity and purpose and application, and solve this problem. But we all got to get on the same page. We all got to identify the variables that are creating the problem instead of focusing on the improper, focusing on just the shelter or what have you. So thanks for giving me the platform. And I know you're going to do great.
You're the best, Zach. Thank you so much again. marleysmutts.org, everyone. Make sure you check it out. And I'm sure we'll be talking again soon about something else. So thanks so much for joining us on Know It All. Now everybody knows it all behind the scenes at the shelters. Don't shop. Adopt, don't shop. We'll see you
All
soon.
Right. Bye, bud.
Well, today's episode was kind of tough, so let's end with something lighter. We loved this video from the dodo. It's the sweetest way to end kind of a difficult conversation, but this is much lighter. This guy's mountain biking in Mongolia, finds a little baby animal, is not even really sure what it is, on the side of the path, and rescues it, throws him in his backpack and rescues this animal. The full video's in the link in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. If you liked what you heard, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review. Know It All is a production of Peggy Bunker Media. Editing, producing, and recording is done by the team at Resonate Recordings. I'm Peggy Bunker, and now you know it all.